I want you all to imagine you're feeling stressed out. Okay, well, you probably don't have to imagine that one. Your school and work responsibilities are piling up, and even though you're seemingly working harder than ever before, you're just not where you want to be in life. And this is really taking a toll on your mental health. So you seek out professional help. You go to therapy. Now, if you're in the United States, your treatment plan probably looks pretty familiar. Your therapist asks about your thought patterns and family life, and maybe at the end of the session, you go over some stress management techniques. Now, this all seems perfectly fine, but this actually gets at one of the key problems with how psychology carries out its treatment and research. It's all very individualistic. Is our stressed out client in therapy because of individual thoughts and behaviors? Or are they feeling overwhelmed because people are working longer hours for worse pay? Because student debt has spiraled out of control? Because millions of people lack access to affordable housing and healthcare? Think about what messages we're sending when we imply that all of these problems and their solutions exist at the individual level. Think about what ideologies get internalized. Psychology likes to pride itself as being a scientific, objective field free from biases. But is this really the case? When the results time and time again is promoting rugged individualism, we have to wonder whether or not psychology could use a hard look in the mirror. We know that the real world isn't apolitical or ahistorical. So why should the psychologist's office be any different? One person who thought this was Ignacio Martin-Baro, a Salvadoran psychologist who completed his PhD at the University of Chicago in the late 70s. Around the same time, civil war broke out in El Salvador, which prompted much of Martin-Baro's writings, teachings, and activism about the importance of addressing not just personal, but also structural factors contributing to oppression. He coined the term liberation psychology, a form of psychology that works to build critical consciousness and actively challenge oppression. Martin-Baro argued that mainstream psychology was full of problematic assumptions, like encouraging us to passively accept oppressive conditions and merely learn to adapt to them. In essence, it's the difference between the social sciences merely existing to answer how and why problems occur, versus mobilizing disciplines like psychology to help us directly confront those problems. So, what does this liberation psychology actually look like? Martin-Baro outlines 3 key tasks in his book, Writings for a Liberation Psychology. First is the recovery of historical memory. The dominant understanding of history often props up internalized oppression. So tracing and taking pride in one's roots not only helps to develop a sense of self and community in the present, but also allows us to use the past as a springboard to develop new visions for a better future. Second is to de-ideologize everyday experiences. And what exactly does all of this jargon mean? Well, Martin-Baro argues that many of the narratives that we believe to be true are ultimately socially and politically constructed. So we need to take a step back and reflect on how these experiences and aspects of our worldview interact with our surroundings. De-ideologizing is about being skeptical and gathering new information to help us better develop our worldview and way of living. And third, we need to utilize our virtues, whatever those might be: solidarity, courage, resiliency. Whatever these virtues might be, rather than focusing solely on pathologized deficits, we can also emphasize the strengths and power we do have to make a better world and a better life. Now, you may be wondering, how is it therapeutic to simply call out all the forms of oppression woven into your life? Wouldn't this just leave clients feeling more hopeless and dejected? To that, I say that liberation psychology is about more than simply recognizing all the ways the world is unjust. It's about empowering people, finding hope and joy in places that other forms of psychology don't bother to look. It's about reclaiming agency and acting upon that. Let's make things more concrete. In a study published by doctors Glenda Russell and Janice Bowen, they specifically study liberation psychology in the context of LGBTQ+ clients. One example they mention is a gay client in Colorado. He and his therapist were struggling to work through his suddenly worsening depression. Using all the usual tactics, nothing seemed to work. And what normally happens here? Well, try a couple strategies in therapy, maybe write a prescription for an antidepressant, and send the client on their way. And this isn't to say that those approaches have no value. They absolutely do. It's just that they shouldn't be the only tools in our toolbox. The problem here was that mainstream psychology kept asking this man, "What is wrong with you?" without ever stopping to ask, "What has happened to you?" When Russell and Bowen gave this man a survey, everything clicked. He realized that at the core of his depression was a surge in homophobic campaigns around him, capped off by an amendment that at the time effectively banned anti-discrimination protection for queer folks in Colorado. Typically in psychology, you're supposed to focus on the individual and block everything else out. But bringing the socio-political into view was crucial in helping this man identify the root of his problems. But of course, this is just the first step in this process. There's more to building critical consciousness than simply acknowledging that the personal and social are linked. With that idea in mind, let's go back to Martin-Baro's 3 tasks. First, we can locate our experiences, not just within historical relationships of oppression, but also histories of pride and resistance for the groups we're a part of. We can de-ideologize. In the example of a gay client, that might look like reframing the idea that internalized homophobia is an individual problem. Rather, the client can free themselves of that burden and pressure by recognizing how the circumstances around them contribute to those feelings. And finally, we can utilize our virtues. Another study by Russell found that those who got involved in their communities and fought for change enjoyed the benefits of better coping and resiliency skills. Simply put, promoting action and taking a firm stance against oppression yields better mental health outcomes. And make no mistake, this isn't just some abstract theory. A paper by Dr. Geraldine Mohn concluded, quote, "The outcomes show the effectiveness of liberation psychology." Similarly, in a study led by Dr. Daniela Dominguez, a group of counseling students were immersed in a liberation psychology course, and the study found, quote, "unique benefits related to their effectiveness as counselors." And none of this should come as a surprise. After all, liberation psychology has a robust history in Latin America and is spreading all over the world. In fact, here in the United States, the Society for Counseling Psychology's 2020 presidential initiative was building a counseling psychology of liberation. All over the United States and the world, we're seeing major universities and academic journals writing and publishing articles and papers, examining further implications and applications of liberation psychology in both research and treatment. The Pacifica Institute in California even now offers a master's and doctoral program, which offers a specialization in, among other things, liberation psychology. So, whether you plan on becoming a mental health professional, seeking out professional help yourself, or simply want a new way of thinking about your mental health and its relationship with the world, there is value in learning about liberation psychology. This approach is a threat to oppression in the status quo. So much so that Ignacio Martin-Baro was murdered by a US-backed Salvadoran militia. Reports say that his final words were, quote, "This is an injustice." And he's absolutely right. But the fight against injustice, the fight for liberation, is just beginning. Thank you.